Hello everyone, in this video we will finally uncover the true nature of the dark side clouds. But a disclaimer, what you are about to find out might not be what you want to hear, because in this video there will be no magic and no mystical force, only logic and common sense. We will be grounding our investigation in historical examples from real-world history. In our first episode we explored the Hindenburg Trap, how the Jedi leadership, much like the German elites of 1933, thought they could hire an authoritarian leader to save a failing republic. There, we answered why Master Yoda left the capital to hide on a remote planet just when the republic was falling apart, and why the Emperor let his greatest enemy walk away. But there are still questions that the history books leave out. Why did Yoda and the Jedi so easily accept a massive, mysterious clone army? And, most importantly, how was the greatest Jedi Master unable to feel the presence of the Sith standing right beside him? Welcome to Episode 2, The Phantom Ledger. Let's begin. Master Sifo-Dyas placed an order for a clone army. Later, the Republic adopted that army into service. Finally, that army turned its weapons against its masters. This isn't unusual. In our world, former Special Forces officers create private military companies, Evan Barlow with Executive Outcomes or Tim Spicer with Sandlion International. Sometimes mercenaries become regular army. The Caucasian Native Horse Division joined the Russian Imperial Guard, and Landsknechts became the backbone of Habsburg regular regiments. And sometimes they turn on their masters. The Mamluks seized Egypt, and the Praetorian Guard assassinated emperors. What is truly unusual is the economics of the clone army. Let's do the math. The clone army at the start of the war consisted of millions of combat personnel units. Each clone requires genetic material and cloning technologies, 10 years of growth and accelerated maturation, energy, food, medicine, training, equipment, weaponry, a fleet for transportation, command and logistics infrastructure. A conservative estimate, the program's cost hundreds of trillions of Republic credits. For comparison, the annual US budget is about $6 trillion. The clone army equals several annual budgets of the galaxy's largest economy. Where did the money come from? The official version is Sifo-Dyas ordered it. But Sifo-Dyas is a monk. Jedi have no personal property. He could not sign a trillion-credit contract in his own name. Someone guaranteed the payment. To find the answer, we have to look for where one could find black money on a scale comparable to the entire Republic's budget. And that search takes us precisely to the sector that everyone else ignored. Naboo is a small planet in the mid-rim. Why does it matter at all? In the Star Wars lore, Naboo is famously known for its plasma mining. Now, to anyone who didn't fail high school physics, the idea of mining plasma is nonsense. But if we move past the pseudo-scientific labels, the strategic reality is dictated by something far more tangible: hyperspace geography. Naboo is located near a stable entry point to a hyperspace corridor connecting the Republic core with the Outer Rim. There are only a few such points in the galaxy. Controlling them means controlling trade flows. Whoever owns the corridor collects transit fees from every ship. This explains why the Trade Federation, a logistics corporation, is so interested in Naboo. It's not the planet's resources, but its position on the map of hyperspace routes. To understand the gravity of this, look at our own history. The Panama Canal, the Suez, the Strait of Malacca. Controlling these bottlenecks of trade has always been worth more than controlling any single resource. Or look at the Strait of Hormuz today, where an ongoing military operation reminds us that wars are fought not just for oil, but for the delivery routes of that oil. Naboo is the Singapore of the faraway galaxy, small, defenseless, but critically important for the logistics of the entire region. And where there is control over trade, there is an endless variety of ways to generate invisible revenue. It starts with simple smuggling and shadow transit fees, unofficial taxes on every ship passing through the corridor. But it goes much deeper. Piracy and anti-piracy rackets, where you fund the pirates and then sell protection to the merchants. Phantom logistics, where you bill the Republic for ghost fleets that exist only on paper. Or complex double accounting, using corridor maintenance as a front to launder illegal profits. And these are just the obvious ones. In a sector this busy, the number of possible schemes is limited only by your imagination. But here is the most important lesson of history. When these kinds of invisible financial opportunities arise, they aren't just used by the bad guys, they are also used by the very people who are supposed to be fighting them. Because sometimes the good guys need resources that don't show up on any official budget. Resources that can fund operations that the public or the Senate can never know about. To see how this looks in practice, we can look at a very real parallel from our own history, the story of Air America and the CIA's shadow funding. In the 1950s-70s, the CIA faced a problem: how to fund covert operations in Southeast Asia that Congress wouldn't approve. The solution? Create a front airline, Air America, which officially handled cargo and passenger transport, but actually smuggled opium from the Golden Triangle. Profits from drug trafficking went to fund operations in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, leaving no traces in the official budget. The scheme worked for decades. The CIA got black money. Local warlords got a distribution channel. The airline got government contracts for legal transport. Everyone was happy, except those dying from heroin in American cities. Now, if we apply this exact same model to the situation at Naboo, as Senator, Palpatine first secures the political architecture, the right laws, tax regimes, and committee votes. This control allows him to skim a consistent surplus from transit fees and channel it into a hidden Naboo budget. A shadow fund accumulates this surplus. Officially, the money doesn't exist. It's lost in rounding errors, in administrative overhead, in line items no auditor would ever flag. The Jedi Order receives funds from this shadow channel for operations that cannot appear in the official Republic budget: covert intelligence networks, diplomatic interventions, bribing informants across the Outer Rim, the wet work of maintaining galactic order without the Senate's knowledge or approval. The Camorroans receive payment for producing a clone army from the same fund. The contract is signed by Sifo Dyas, but the money doesn't come from Sifo Dyas. He's a signature on a page. The cash flows from Naboo's transit surplus, laundered through enough intermediaries that no forensic accountant in the Republic could trace it back. This isn't corruption in the primitive sense. It's a parallel financial system for conducting policy that official institutions would never approve. The Jedi get to protect the Republic by methods the Republic cannot officially sanction. Palpatine gets political leverage over the Order. And the whole thing runs quietly, invisibly, for years, maybe decades. Everything was working perfectly until the crisis hit. The Trade Federation suddenly shuts down the corridor, and its massive hulls appear in Naboo's orbit. This entire escalation was executed under the secret instructions of Senator Palpatine. Palpatine organized a variation of the Camorra scheme, famously used by the Casalese clan in the Italian regions of Calabria and Campania. The clan offers a landowner a super profitable contract for burying toxic waste from northern factories. This is done through a front company secretly controlled by the clan. The landowner sees money like they've never seen before and immediately takes out massive bank loans to expand, buy equipment, and more land. Once the debt is secured, the clan suddenly stops the waste deliveries. The income hits zero, but the bank bills keep coming. That's when the clan returns with help. We will pay off your debts to the bank and keep you from being turned over to the authorities, but you transfer the entire company and land to us. 99% of their targets agree. Palpatine's original plan was elegant. The Trade Federation closes the Naboo hub, choking the Jedi Order's funding. Simultaneously, the Federation hints to Yoda that they have compromising evidence on their shadow accounts, while the Kaminoans present a multi-trillion credit bill. Then, with Palpatine acting as the neutral mediator, the Trade Federation offers to absorb the Jedi's debts, under the condition that Yoda goes into early retirement on Dagobah. Soon, without firing a single shot or spilling a drop of blood, Palpatine would take the Senate, while the Jedi would vacate their luxurious temple in the capital and move to Arkinia. Living like Shaolin monks, they would spend their days entertaining crowds in a circus, mere curiosities for the galactic public. But then, all these plans were ruined by a chain of unforeseen accidents. The first accident: the 14-year-old girl appointed as queen. Instead of amusing herself by trying on elaborate outfits, she started sticking her nose into the business of big uncles, wandering through dangerous places, and making friends with the natives. The second accident, the appearance of a boy wonder. And the third, an idiot native who somehow dragged an entire people into the war, a force that no one had even bothered to account for. The obvious historical analogy here is the Maid of Orleans, Joan of Arc. Despite her hallucinations and obsessive convictions, she successfully galvanized the French spirit, laying the groundwork for their eventual triumph in the 100 Years' War in 1453. Together, Padme Amidala and Jar Jar Binks functioned as this Joan of Arc figure, the catalyst that nobody in Palpatine's or the Trade Federation spreadsheets ever accounted for. What Yoda did during the Naboo crisis, he sent a single Jedi to Naboo. Why? Because a full-scale military operation would have drawn too much attention to the scheme. Think about it. A Republic fleet de-blocking the planet means journalists, Senate commissions, and auditors. Someone would start asking the wrong questions. The cost of this minimum publicity was paid in blood. While the Jedi negotiated, the Gungan Grand Army was being systematically annihilated. This was a slaughterhouse of primitive warriors against a pitiless machine army. The loner policy didn't prevent a war. It simply ensured it happened in the dark, far from the Senate's ears. Queen Amidala won. It's a triumph, but for the Shadow Scheme, it's a death warrant. Padme is now far too popular to silence and too politically backed by the Gungans to ignore. The Naboo funding pipeline is officially toxic. For the clone project, this means a total financial default. The Kaminoans need their payment. This is where Count Dooku steps in. A Sereno aristocracy with deep corporate ties, he offers the Trade Federation a deal. The clone army will still be built, but under new management. Yoda can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The immediate threat of bankruptcy has vanished. The army continues to grow in the shadows, and everyone remains in their place. The status quo is preserved. This brings us to the biggest mystery of all. How did the greatest Jedi Master of his era fail to sense a Sith Lord sitting in the office next door? The traditional explanation is the dark side clouds everything. But in the logic of our analysis, the answer is much simpler and much more human. It wasn't magical blindness. It was institutional blindness. Yoda chose not to ask where the money was coming from or why Palpatine was so effective because the results were too valuable to lose. The Shadow Fund was working. The Order was resourced. The war was, officially, being won. We see this exact pattern in the career of J. Edgar Hoover, the legendary director of the FBI. For 30 years, Hoover publicly denied that the Mafia even existed. He called it a myth created by journalists. Why? Because acknowledging the Mafia would mean admitting it had already corrupted the politicians who approved his budget. It would mean starting a massive, dangerous war that the FBI wasn't ready to fight. Yoda was in the same trap. Every year he didn't notice Palpatine's true nature. The cost of admitting the truth went up. To recognize Palpatine as a Sith would be to admit that the Jedi had been funded by their greatest enemy for over a decade. It was easier, safer, and more responsible for the institution to simply keep not seeing. In the previous episode, we raised some uncomfortable questions. Why, at the most critical moment in galactic history, did Master Yoda suddenly leave for Kashyyyk? Why did Palpatine allow his most dangerous enemy to simply walk away after their duel? And why did Yoda spend 20 years in total silence on Dagobah? Let's answer these questions again. Yoda didn't go to Kashyyyk to fight a battle. He went there to avoid being present for the inevitable collapse. By being on a remote planet during the coup, he avoided the immediate political fallout. Palpatine let Yoda go because a living, silent exile is far more useful than a dead martyr. A dead Yoda might trigger a final, explosive leak of the Jedi archives. A living Yoda hidden on a swamp planet is a witness who has chosen his own cage. This brings us to a striking historical parallel. Alexander Kerensky, the head of the Russian Provisional Government in 1917. Kerensky knew the Bolshevik uprising was coming. He knew his own administration was hollow, corridors of power were rotted with corruption, and the army was failing. On the very night the Bolsheviks began seizing Petrograd, Kerensky left the city on business, supposedly to gather troops at the front. The coup happened without him. After a failed attempt at a counter-revolution, he emigrated. First to France, then the US. He lived until 1970, writing memoirs and speaking on the radio, while the Soviet government never truly tried to eliminate him. Kerensky's silence about the 1917 government's true state was vital to the transition's stability. Like him, Yoda chose quiet reflection over a suicidal trial. On Dagobah, his silence was the price of survival, ensuring the Shadow Scheme's secrets never destabilized the Empire. To summarize, why did Yoda so easily accept a massive, mysterious clone army? The answer is uncomfortable, because he already knew about it. The army wasn't a surprise. It was a project he had sanctioned. It didn't unfold exactly as he had envisioned, but he was a participant in the process from the start. There is no mystical dark side cloud masking the truth. What we see instead is classic institutional blindness. This is a phenomenon we encounter in our own world every time a political leader or a CEO begins to hide information. When dark money and phantom ledgers replace transparency, the resulting fog is administrative, not magical. Yoda was blinded by the very secrets he helped protect, but the ledger always demands a balance. The only real weapon against this dark cloud is the truth, not demagoguery about the Republic and democracy. And if you're ready to face the truth, in the next video we'll reveal a series of top-secret documents from the Jedi Temple archives, documents that were never meant to see the light of day. Thanks for watching.